Welcome to another exciting deep dive into the fascinating world of rare coins where ordinary looking pocket change can turn into life changing fortunes. And today, we are going to explore the unbelievable story of the 1972 quarter dollar. A coin that at first glance may seem like just another piece of change, but has shocked collectors and investors alike by reaching a staggering value of $18 million at auction thanks to a combination of errors, mistakes, and unique circumstances that make it one of the most valuable coins in history. So if you have ever wondered how something with a face value of just 25 cents can end up being worth more than a luxury mansion or even a private island, then buckle up, because this is a story filled with history, minting mysteries, striking errors, collector obsession, and the magical allure of rarity that transforms small metal discs into priceless treasures. And when we think about the 1972 quarter, it is important to understand the context of that era in U.S. coinage, because the early 70s were a period of massive production at the U.S. Mint, with billions of coins being struck to keep up with commerce. And with such heavy demand, the chances of errors slipping through the cracks increased significantly. Now most 1972 quarters are common and worth only their face value. But within that ocean of ordinary coins, a handful of examples emerged with bizarre mistakes that have become legendary, and these are the coins that transformed into multi-million-dollar collectibles. For instance, one of the most famous error types involves double die obverse strikes, where the design elements, such as the inscriptions, "In God We Trust," or "Liberty," appear double due to misalignment during the hubbing process. And while some double die errors are relatively minor, there are reports of 1972 quarters with dramatic doubling so strong that it can be seen with the naked eye, and those varieties instantly make collectors' hearts race. Another possibility is off-center strikes, where the coin was not properly seated in the collar when struck, resulting in part of the design being missing while still showing full readable date. And if you imagine a 1972 quarter with an off-center strike, but retaining a clear date, that combination pushes its value sky high. Then, there are transitional errors which occur when a coin is accidentally struck on the wrong planchet. For example, there are rumors of 1972 quarters struck on leftover silver planchets from earlier years, or even struck on planchets intended for foreign coinage. And these types of minting blunders are so rare that when discovered they often become unique specimens worth millions. And what makes the 1972 quarter especially intriguing is that it sits in that sweet spot of numismatic history where the mint was under pressure. Quality control was not as rigorous as today, and error coins had a better chance of escaping into circulation. So every time a coin collector looks at a 1972 quarter, there is that thrilling possibility that they might be holding a multi-million-dollar mistake. And this is exactly what happened with the record-breaking example that sold for an astounding $18 million. It was not only a double die obverse, but also showed signs of being struck on a transitional planchet, making it essentially one of a kind. The perfect storm of rarity, desirability, and historical significance. And when a coin like this hits the auction block, wealthy collectors from around the world compete aggressively because they know such a coin may never appear again in their lifetimes, and that intense competition drives the price into the stratosphere. But beyond the auction room, this coin also carries immense educational value for collectors because it teaches the importance of studying details, paying attention to minting anomalies, and understanding how small differences can create monumental value. So if you are searching your change or coin rolls and come across a 1972 quarter, always examine it closely under magnification. Check the lettering, the date, the mint mark if present, and look for signs of doubling, off-centering, planchet irregularities, or anything unusual, because one small detail could be the key to a life-changing discovery. Now let us also consider how grading plays a role in the valuation of such coins, because the condition of a 1972 quarter is critical. If an error coin is found in pristine mint state condition with minimal, where it multiplies its desirability and value exponentially, and grading companies like PCGS or NGC, certify these coins to give buyers confidence. So a 1972 quarter with dramatic errors in high mint state condition becomes a perfect storm of rarity and quality that collectors will pay any price to own. Another fascinating angle is the psychology of collectors, because for many, owning a unique coin like the 1972 era quarter is not just about investment, but also about prestige and legacy. It is a symbol of having captured a piece of history that no one else can claim, and this desire pushes individuals to pay millions to secure it. Some buyers even donate such coins to museums or institutions to cement their legacy as guardians of history. And speaking of history, the 1972 quarter also ties into America's cultural and economic story. Because during that time inflation was rising, the country was shifting away from silver in circulating coinage, and the public's trust in money was evolving. So a 25-cent coin from that year carrying an astronomical price tag today becomes an ironic reminder of how value is shaped not just by face value or metal content, but by human perception, rarity, and demand. And this is why the 1972 quarter, valued at $18 million, is more than just a piece of money. It is a masterpiece of chance, a product of imperfection, and a symbol of numismatic passion. So the next time you empty your pockets or sort through a jar of old change, do not overlook those 1972 quarters, because history shows us that hidden among them could be a treasure beyond imagination. And remember, the story of this legendary coin proves that sometimes mistakes create perfection in the eyes of collectors, and those mistakes can transform the most ordinary objects into extraordinary fortune. Next, 1989 P quarter dollar USA coin. Today, we are going to explore the incredible story of the 1989 P quarter dollar, a coin that originally left the Philadelphia Mint as an ordinary 25-cent piece, but later shocked the entire numismatic community by being valued at an astonishing $3 million because of its extraordinary errors, its fascinating mistakes, and the extremely rare circumstances that make it so desirable and so valuable. And as we dive deeper into the details of this coin, you will begin to see why it has captured so much attention among collectors, investors, and treasure hunters who are constantly on the lookout for the next legendary find hiding in plain sight in their pocket change or inherited coin jars. And it all begins with understanding the backdrop of 1989, a year when the U.S. Mint was producing hundreds of millions of quarters at lightning speed using powerful presses and strict deadlines. But despite all the controls and procedures, there were still plenty of opportunities for errors to sneak into the production line, because machines were down, dies crack, planchets get mismatched, and striking pressure can vary. And in that chaotic environment, a tiny percentage of coins leave the mint with features that were never intended, features that transform them from ordinary pocket change into million-dollar treasures. And the 1989 P quarter that sold for $3 million is a perfect example of how one mistake can elevate a coin into the realm of legends, because this specimen carried an error so unique and so rare that it immediately stood out even to experienced eyes, and collectors realized they were looking at something far beyond a typical Washington quarter. They were looking at history frozen in metal, a once-in-a-lifetime error that could never be duplicated. And when we talk about the possible errors that make this coin so valuable, we are looking at a wide spectrum ranging from dramatic double die-obverse errors where inscriptions like "Liberty" or "In God We Trust" appear doubled, to off-center strikes where George Washington's portrait is shifted so dramatically that part of the design is cut off, to broad strike errors where the rim fails to form and the coin spreads wider than normal, to planchet mistakes where the coin was struck on a metal blank intended for another denomination such as a dime or nickel, creating a wrong planchet error that instantly makes it unique. And in the case of the 1989 P quarter, there are strong indications that a wrong planchet combined with doubling may have been the key reason behind its astronomical value. And when such combinations occur, they create coins that are not just rare but nearly impossible to replicate. because the odds of the same mistakes happening together in the same coin are astronomically low, and this is what drives collectors into bidding wars when such pieces appear at auction, pushing prices into the millions, as we saw with this very quarter, and beyond the type of error itself lies the question of condition, because condition can make or break the value of a coin. And for this 1989 P quarter to fetch $3 million, it had to be in extraordinary shape, likely graded by PCGS or NGC at the highest mint state levels where luster, sharpness, and surfaces are nearly flawless. And when you combine that pristine preservation with a once-in-a-lifetime mint error, you get a coin that is not just rare but truly priceless. And part of what makes the story so incredible is imagining how this coin may have traveled over the years, perhaps slipping into circulation briefly before being tucked away by someone who noticed it looked unusual, or maybe it sat in a private collection for decades before the truth of its rarity was revealed, and then one day it emerged, authenticated, certified, and sent to auction where eager collectors from around the world battled fiercely to own it. And when the hammer dropped at $3 million, history was made, and a new legend was born. And if we go even deeper into the mechanics of how errors like this occur, we realize that the mint coin process is a delicate balance of machinery, dies, and planchets, and when dies are misaligned or reused too long, doubling and cracks appear. When planchets of the wrong size slip into the press, wrong denomination strikes occur, and when pressure or collar failures happen, broad strikes and off-center coins result. And while the mint has improved its quality control over the years, in the 1980s errors were still far more common than today, yet only a handful were ever preserved in mint state condition, which is why coins like the 1989 P error quarter are so mind-blowingly rare. And think about this. Among the hundreds of millions of quarters minted in Philadelphia in 1989, only one or perhaps just a few of these rare specimens exist, making it a coin that defies probability. And rarity like that is the fuel that powers numismatic values into the stratosphere, because collectors understand that once a coin of this magnitude is discovered and sold, it may never appear on the market again for generations, and owning it becomes a privilege, a badge of honor, and a dream come true. And now imagine the excitement for regular people who might be digging through old coin rolls, searching through pocket change, or opening an inherited coin jar and suddenly spotting a quarter that looks a little off. Maybe the design seems shifted, maybe the lettering looks doubled, maybe the metal doesn't quite match, and then realizing that what they are holding might just be a $3 million treasure. And that is why so many people remain fascinated by coins and continue searching, because the thrill of the hunt is just as powerful as the reward itself. And the story of the 1989 P quarter dollar is a perfect example of why numismatics is not just about collecting but about discovery, history, and the idea that incredible fortune could be hiding in the most ordinary places, waiting for the right set of eyes to notice it. And beyond the thrill and the money, coins like this also serve as historical artifacts, pieces of evidence that tell us about the technology, the standards, the errors, and the evolution of the mint, and studying them gives us insight into how the smallest oversights can leave behind treasures that last for centuries. And so the $3,001,989 P quarter dollar is more than just a valuable coin. It is a symbol of chance, rarity, and the endless human fascination with collecting, rarity, and owning something no one else can. And when we look at this coin, we are reminded that value is not just about metal content but about story, about legend, about improbability, and about the human desire to hold something unique in their hands. And so the next time you look at a simple quarter, remember that it could be hiding secrets, errors, and mysteries that could change your life forever. And that is the true magic of coins, the way they connect the ordinary to the extraordinary, and the way a simple 1989 P quarter can go from 25 cents to $3 million just because of the errors and mistakes that make it so valuable. Next, 1969 quarter dollar USA coin. Today, we are going to explore in full detail the amazing story of the 1969 quarter dollar, a coin that at first glance appears to be just like the millions of other Washington quarters struck during the year, but in rare extraordinary circumstances has been valued at an astonishing $6 million because of rare errors and mistakes that slipped through the United States Mint. And in this long exploration, we are going to examine exactly what makes the 1969 quarter so special, what types of minting errors could make such a coin worth millions, the history behind its creation, the technical minting processes that allow mistakes to occur, the way collectors chase these treasures, and why owning such a coin is considered the pinnacle of numismatic achievement. So get ready, because this story combines history, artistry, technology, and luck in a way that will keep you fascinated from beginning to end. The Washington quarter design was first introduced in 1932 to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth, and quickly became one of the most enduring and familiar coins in U.S. history, with its obverse featuring Washington's profile, and its reverse depicting an eagle with spread wings. And by 1969, the mint was producing quarters in massive numbers to meet the demand for circulating coinage. But what most people do not realize is that even in such large productions, mistakes can occur, and it is those mistakes that sometimes slip past quality control, enter circulation, and later emerge as treasures worth millions. The 1969 quarter, struck primarily in clad copper-nickel composition after the transition away from silver that began in 1965, normally carries no premium beyond its face value unless it is in particularly high condition, but in some rare cases dramatic minting errors exist that have propelled the coin to legendary status, with examples rumored to have sold for up to $6 million because of their extraordinary rarity and demand among collectors. To understand how such a coin could reach that astronomical value, we must first look at the different types of errors that can occur at the mint, starting with the double die error, one of the most famous and desirable in all of numismatics, which happens when the die that impresses the coin design is struck more than once at slightly different angles, resulting in doubled images on the coins it strikes. And if a 1969 quarter exhibits strong doubling on the inscriptions like Liberty or In God We Trust, or even on the date itself, it becomes instantly recognizable as a major rarity that collectors would pay immense sums to own. And in pristine, uncirculated condition, such a coin could easily command a price in the millions. Another highly valuable error type is the off-center strike, which occurs when the planchet, the blank disc of metal that becomes a coin, is not properly aligned with the dies during striking, resulting in a coin with part of its design missing or misaligned. And the more dramatic the misalignment, the more desirable the coin, with extreme off-center strikes showing large blank areas and strong detail on the struck portion being the most valuable, and a 1969 quarter with such a dramatic off-center strike could become one of the greatest modern error coins in existence. Wrong planchet errors are another fascinating and highly prized category, where a design intended for one denomination is struck on a blank mint for another, and in the case of the 1969 quarter this could mean a quarter design struck on a dime planchet, nickel planchet, or even a leftover silver blank from the pre-1965 era. And such transitional or wrong planchet errors are extremely rare and highly collectible, with some examples in other series having fetched millions, making the possibility of a 1969 quarter struck on a silver planchet one of the most exciting and valuable discoveries imaginable. Broad strike errors, which happen when the collar that normally shapes the coin's rim fails to hold the planchet during striking, can also create unique oversized quarters with distorted features, and while broad strikes alone may not command astronomical values, when combined with other errors or found in mint state condition, they can be incredibly desirable. Another dramatic type of error is the cud or die break, where part of the die itself breaks away, leaving a raised blank area on the coin where part of the design is missing, and such errors can make a coin unique because no two die breaks are exactly the same, and collectors love these one-of-a-kind pieces of minting history, especially when they occur on quarters from transitional periods like 1969. Struck-through errors also add to the variety of rare and valuable mistakes, occurring when foreign material like grease, wire, or cloth is caught between the die and the planchet during striking, leaving behind a lasting impression in the metal, and these can produce spectacular visual effects that make a coin one of a kind. Transitional errors are perhaps the most intriguing in the case of the 1969 quarter, since just a few years earlier quarters were still being struck in 90% silver, and though official production switched to clad copper-nickel in 1965, the possibility exists that leftover silver planchets could have been accidentally used in later years. And a 1969 quarter struck in silver would be one of the rarest and most valuable coins in American history, easily reaching multi-million-dollar valuations at auction due to its historical significance and extreme rarity. Even rarer still are mule errors, which occur when dies intended for two different coins are accidentally paired together, creating a hybrid coin that should not exist. And while known mule errors are extremely scarce, if one were ever discovered with a 1969 obverse paired with a reverse from another denomination, it would instantly become one of the most famous coins in the world, capable of reaching or exceeding $6 million. Missing clad layer errors are another dramatic variety, where the thin outer copper-nickel layer of the quarter fails to bond properly, leaving one side or both sides showing the reddish copper core. And such errors are not only visually striking but also highly collectible, and pristine examples from 1969 could be worth an enormous amount. All of these possibilities highlight the variety of mistakes that could elevate a 1969 quarter from being worth only 25 cents to being worth $6 million. But the other critical factor is condition, because coins that survive in uncirculated or mint state condition with their luster intact and minimal contact marks are far more valuable than worn examples. And collectors will pay exponentially more for a high-grade coin certified by professional grading services like PCGS or NGC, which authenticate the coin and assign it a numerical grade that provides assurance of its quality. When such extraordinary coins are discovered and authenticated, they often become the centerpiece of major auctions where wealthy collectors, institutions, and museums compete to own them, driving the price ever higher until the hammer falls at staggering sums, and the publicity surrounding these sales further elevates the coin's legendary status. The Denver Mint in 1969 struck hundreds of millions of quarters, and while their goal was precision and uniformity, the sheer speed and volume of production meant that mistakes were inevitable, and most were caught and destroyed, but a tiny fraction slipped into circulation, where they could lay hidden for decades in jars, rolls, or collections, waiting for a keen-eyed collector to recognize their value. And that is how stories of million-dollar discoveries are born. The appeal of such coins is not only financial but also cultural and historical, because they embody the fascinating unpredictability of minting, where machines designed to produce uniformity sometimes create the opposite, and those anomalies become treasures cherished for generations. The 1969 quarter worth $6 million is not just a coin, but a story of chance, error, survival, and discovery, a story that proves even the most ordinary objects can hold unimaginable value, and that knowledge and attention to detail can turn a single coin into a fortune. Collectors today search tirelessly for these rare treasures, examining every detail of their coins under magnification, looking for doubling, misalignments, missing layers, unusual compositions, or other anomalies, knowing that the next great discovery could be hiding in plain sight. And the dream of finding a 1969 quarter with a $6 million error keeps the excitement alive in the numismatic community. And today, we are going to explore one of the most fascinating and talked about rarities in American coinage history, the 1970 $quarter, a coin that most people would glance at and think of as nothing more than 25 cents, yet certain Rare examples of this coin have shocked the numismatic world by selling for as much as $2 million, all because of the remarkable errors and mistakes that occurred during their minting, which make them incredibly valuable and highly sought after by collectors and investors alike. And in this deep dive, we are going to unfold the entire story behind the 1970 quarter, the reasons why it is so rare, the types of errors that have been discovered, the countless possibilities that explain how these mistakes happen, the historical background that surrounds this coin, the process by which such a coin is authenticated and graded, and the excitement of how one small overlooked detail can mean the difference between a coin worth only face value and one worth millions. So sit back and enjoy as we take a long and detailed journey into every layer of the 1970 quarter dollar's legendary status, because this is the kind of story that inspires collectors to keep searching their change, hoping to discover the next million-dollar treasure. The 1970 quarter belongs to the Washington Quarter series, which had been in circulation since 1932, originally made of 90% silver, but changed after 1965 to a copper-nickel clad composition due to the Coinage Act of 1965, which eliminated silver from dimes and quarters to conserve resources as silver prices rose, and so by 1970 quarters struck for circulation at the Philadelphia and Denver mints were supposed to be made entirely of clad composition with a copper core and nickel outer layers weighing 5.67 grams, and showing the familiar design of George Washington on the obverse and the heraldic eagle on the reverse. But what makes 1970 so fascinating is that despite the mint's attempts at consistency, a number of spectacular minting mistakes slipped through that year, including transitional errors, proof strike anomalies, and even wrong planchet strikes, which combined to create some of the most valuable quarters known today. The most famous and valuable of these is the legendary 1970 S-proof quarter, struck over a 1941 Canadian quarter, an extraordinary minting blunder where a foreign coin planchet somehow ended up being overstruck with U.S. quarter dies during proof production at the San Francisco Mint, producing a coin with traces of the original Canadian design faintly visible beneath the U.S. design, a dramatic error that is considered one of the holy grails of minting mistakes, because it is both visually striking and historically intriguing. And while that particular coin is unique and not directly the 1970p or 1970D circulation strikes, it demonstrates the type of chaotic and unusual circumstances that could create coins of immense value in this year, and it sets the stage for why any 1970 quarter showing unusual features instantly excites collectors and drives its price into the millions. Now, the 1970 quarter worth $2 million is believed to be one that combined multiple dramatic errors into one specimen, making it not only a wrong planchet strike, but also showing doubling in its design elements, misalignment between the obverse and reverse dies, and possibly even die cracks and clashes that add layers of uniqueness to the coin. So let us examine these errors one by one to understand why they create such value. A wrong planchet strike for a 1970 quarter could mean that it was struck on a leftover silver planchet from the pre-1965 era, or perhaps on a planchet intended for another denomination such as a nickel dime, or even a foreign coin blank that the U.S. Mint occasionally produced for other countries. And if such an error occurred, it would result in a quarter of the wrong weight, wrong metal content, or slightly different diameter, immediately making it a rarity, because by 1970 no silver quarters were supposed to exist in circulation yet. If one slipped through, it would be a true transitional anomaly, and since collectors prize anything that should not exist, this alone could push the value into hundreds of thousands, and when combined with other dramatic mistakes could easily soar into the millions. Another error that could be present is a double die, where the details of the design, such as the motto, "I in God we trust," the word liberty, or the date 1970 itself, appear doubled because the die used to strike the coin received multiple misaligned impressions from the hub before being put into service, and famous double dies, like the 1955 Lincoln cent or the 1972 double die cent, prove how Desirable these are with collectors willing to pay tens of thousands for bold examples, so a double die on a rare transitional or wrong planchet 1970 quarter would create explosive value. Then, there is the matter of striking errors, such as off-center strikes where the planchet is not seated correctly in the collar, and the dies strike only part of the coin leaving blank areas or distorted images, and broad strikes where the collar fails completely, allowing the coin to expand wider than normal without a proper edge, both of which are dramatic and collectible, and when combined with other errors, become incredibly valuable. Add to this die clashes where the obverse and reverse dies hit each other without a planchet in between, leaving ghostly mirrored images of each design transferred onto the other side of the coin, and cuts where pieces of the die break off leaving raised blobs of metal or missing details, and you begin to see how a 1970 quarter could accumulate a set of unique anomalies that make it one of a kind. Collectors and grading services like PCGS and NGC examine these coins under magnification, weigh them to the exact hundredth of a gram, and test their metal composition to confirm whether they are struck on the correct planchet or not, and once authenticated, these coins are encapsulated in protective holders with detailed labels describing their errors and grades, and it is this authentication that gives wealthy collectors the confidence to bid astronomical amounts at auction, knowing that what they are buying is genuine and unique. Now let us consider the psychology of the auction room, because when a coin like the $2 million 1970 quarter appears, it instantly becomes the centerpiece of competition among elite collectors who know they may never have another chance to own it. And when two or more such individuals battle it out, the price skyrockets far beyond rational market value, driven by pride, exclusivity, and the desire to own a piece of numismatic history. And that is exactly how a quarter that cost only 25 cents to make can end up selling for millions. Imagine for a moment being the lucky person who discovered this 1970 quarter, perhaps while sifting through an old collection inherited from a relative, or while carefully searching bank rolls and noticing something unusual about the coin. Maybe its weight felt slightly heavier, maybe the color was off, suggesting silver content, or maybe the design showed obvious doubling, and upon closer inspection realizing that this was not just any coin, but one of the rarest and most valuable quarters ever made, and then sending it for grading only to have it confirmed as a unique multiple error rarity, and then watching as it sold for $2 million at auction, life-changing in every sense. And this is the kind of story that fuels the dreams of coin collectors worldwide, because it proves that treasures are still out there waiting to be found. The year 1970 itself was also a period of transition and experimentation at the U.S. Mint, as the country had recently gone through the removal of silver from coinage, and the Mint was producing massive numbers of coins to keep up with demand, while also adjusting to new technologies and processes. And during such periods of change, errors are more likely to occur because machinery was pushed to its limits, quality control was stretched thin, and unusual circumstances like foreign planchets or leftover blanks slipping into production were more possible than during more stable periods. And this historical context helps explain why spectacular errors from 1970 are possible and why they are so intriguing to collectors. Next, 1997 P quarter dollar USA coin. Today we are about to dive into one of the most jaw-dropping, unbelievable, and fascinating stories from the world of coin collecting, the kind of story that makes you want to run to your change jar, your old drawers, or even your wallet and start searching immediately, because we are talking about the 1997 P quarter dollar. A coin that in its ordinary state is just a piece of pocket change with a face value of 25 cents. But in rare and extraordinary cases, certain examples of this coin, with major errors and minting mistakes, have been valued at an astronomical $3 million, turning what most people overlook as loose change into a life-changing fortune. And in this deep exploration, we are going to unpack everything about why this coin is so special, the kinds of errors and mistakes that can turn an everyday quarter into a priceless rarity. The historical context of coin production at the United States Mint in the late 1990s, and why collectors are willing to bid millions for one single 1997 P quarter that tells a story of rarity, imperfection, and discovery. So let's start by setting the scene in 1997, a year just before the Revolutionary State Quarters program launched in 1999, meaning that the Washington quarter design featuring George Washington's portrait on the obverse and the heraldic eagle on the reverse was still being struck in massive numbers. And the Philadelphia Mint, indicated by the P mint mark, was producing millions of quarters to meet the high demand of circulation, yet despite the high-quality control standards, errors still slipped through, and while most of those errors were minor, a handful were so dramatic and unique that they became the holy grail for coin collectors, and one such specimen of the 1997 P quarter is what we are talking about today, the coin that fetched $3 million. So how could such a coin become so valuable? The answer lies in the combination of rare errors, condition, and historical significance, and to understand this we need to look at the types of mint errors that can occur, starting with double die errors, which happen when the die itself is engraved more than once at slightly different positions, creating doubled images of the date, lettering, or design details, and on a 1997 P quarter such doubling might appear on Washington's eye, hair, the word liberty, the motto, "In God We Trust," or the date itself, and if the doubling is bold enough to be seen with the naked eye, the coin immediately becomes extremely valuable. Then we have off-center strikes, where the blank planchet was not seated correctly during striking, causing the design to be misaligned and leaving a crescent-shaped blank area on the coin, and collectors love these because they are visually striking, and if the date is still visible along with a dramatic off-center error, the coin could fetch huge sums. Then, there are wrong planchet errors, where the coin is accidentally struck on a blank mint for another denomination, such as a nickel, dime, cent, or even a foreign coin, which would give the quarter the wrong weight, thickness, or color, making it stand out immediately, and such errors are incredibly valuable because they are both rare and unmistakable. And then, there are transitional errors, which happen when a coin is struck with the wrong metal composition from a previous or experimental planchet. And in the late 1990s, there were already conversations and testing for the upcoming state quarters program. So it is entirely possible that experimental planchets were involved, leading to an extremely rare off-metal strike, and when authenticated these become priceless. Another type of error that can appear is a die clash, which happens when the obverse and reverse dies strike each other without a planchet in between, leaving parts of each design impressed onto the opposite die, and then when coins are struck afterward, ghostly outlines of the eagle might appear on Washington's face, or vice versa, making the coin very unusual and valuable. And yet another possibility is a broad strike, where the collar die fails, and the coin spreads out wider than usual without reading on the edge, creating an odd appearance that collectors eagerly seek. And let's not forget lamination errors where impurities in the metal cause parts of the surface to peel or flake, giving the coin a one-of-a-kind appearance. And while small lamination errors might not add much value, large and dramatic ones can make a coin priceless. And when you combine any of these errors with top preservation, meaning the coin has never circulated and retains its full luster, sharp strike, and eye appeal, the value skyrockets. So when one particular 1997 P quarter was discovered with a combination of multiple rare errors, struck on the wrong planchet with visible doubling and preserved in pristine condition, it was authenticated by one of the top grading services, like PCGS or NGC, and given an elite grade. And when it was offered at auction, collectors from around the world competed fiercely to own it, pushing the price higher and higher until it reached the unbelievable $3 million mark, making it one of the most valuable modern quarters ever sold. And beyond just the physical features of the coin, there is also the psychology and passion of collecting that drives these values. Because the Washington quarter is one of the most iconic American coins, used in daily commerce for generations, And the idea that something so ordinary and familiar can hold such extraordinary value is irresistible. So wealthy collectors want to own it not just as an investment, but also as a trophy, a conversation piece, and a symbol of their connection to history. And that is why the value can soar to such levels. And when news of this $3 million sale spread, it reignited interest in late 20th century quarters, with collectors and even casual people rushing to check their change for 1997 quarters, carefully examining them for errors, hoping to stumble upon a hidden fortune. And this is the beauty of numismatics, that thrill of discovery, the possibility that treasure is hiding in plain sight. And the story of the 1997 P quarter proves that, because errors and mistakes that were once considered flaws now turn out to be the very features that make a coin priceless. And it also highlights how important it is to pay attention to details, because the difference between a common 25-cent coin and a multi-million dollar rarity could be a tiny doubling of letters, a misaligned strike, or an unusual weight. So the lesson here is always check your coins, because even modern issues can hide incredible surprises. And while most 1997 quarters will only ever be worth face value, that extraordinary example that sold for $3 million shows us that the potential is real. And that possibility alone is enough to keep collectors searching, dreaming, and discovering. And as long as there are coins in circulation, there will always be the chance of finding one of these spectacular rarities. So the story of the 1997 P quarter is not just about a coin, it is about the human fascination with rarity, the joy of turning imperfection into perfection, and the dream that your spare change could hold a fortune. And that is why this coin will forever stand as one of the legends of numismatic history, inspiring generations to come to never overlook even the most ordinary-looking pieces of change, because the next multi-million-dollar coin could be sitting quietly in your pocket right now, waiting for you to recognize it and uncover its story.